Um, there's a team of 5 presenting something that's closely related to the previous presentation. So lexicographic appraisal of an automatic approach for detecting new word senses. And I think there are 2 presenters here, and I'll let Michael start.
Thank you very much, Istok. This is what we'll be talking about today. From the point of view of Paul and his collaborators in Melbourne, I mean, this is part of their ongoing serious language engineering research, specifically in the area of word sense induction. But from my point of view as a dictionary producer, developer, I'm interested in its potential for streamlining yet another lexicographic task. So that's all part of this long-term project, which Istok has also just talked about, of trying to automate the various processes that are involved in producing dictionaries. And one of those processes is finding novel senses of words that are already in the dictionary. The whole sort of automation thing, I don't need to say much more about that because Istok's already covered it. Adam and I have worked for a long time on various Macmillan projects doing some of these things, and Adam, Sue Atkins and I also implemented some of these things in the Dante project, and Simone, Istok, Polona and their colleagues in Slovenia have also been working in these areas. The main thing to say is that the goal from the point of view of dictionary developers is to make life easier, do things more efficiently, do them quicker, and therefore save money. But what we've always found each time we've done something like this is that there is a byproduct, a secondary effect, which is that we find that we don't just do things quicker, but we do them better as well. That it adds a kind of systematicity and comprehensiveness to the process. So that's sort of a real bonus. Talking about updating dictionaries. Updating dictionaries is something that people do. People in lexicography do a lot more of that than they do actually generating new dictionaries from scratch. John, who was talking this morning about the OED, everybody working on the OED is essentially updating it and improving it in various ways rather than creating a new dictionary from scratch, and that's what most of us do most of the time. There's a lot more to updating a dictionary than just adding new words. That's a relatively easy bit, and it's the bit that people in the media, of course, are rather obsessed by. So just mention here a couple of things we've done in a recent update of Macmillan. Added various new words like Bangalore. That's when you lose your job because it's been outsourced to Bangalore or Hyderabad or somewhere like that. We recently, but the next 2 bullet points are more interesting, actually, from my point of view. Changes in usage to existing words. So we changed the definition of the word meeting to take account of the fact that meetings no longer have to be everybody face-to-face in the same room. They can be virtual as well. We added a new preposition to the word bored, slightly controversially, because there's a lot of evidence that among younger people, the preferred preposition is of rather than with. So people, certainly under 30, mostly say I'm bored of it rather than I'm bored with it, and so on. Genius, of course, is now used adjectively very widely, a genius idea. And then new meanings of existing words. I mentioned here, well, swipe is obvious. That's what you do with touch screens. And like, like us on Facebook, 500 people have liked this page, and so on. It's clearly a new meaning. Well, our goal is to be complete rather than just random. So how do we achieve that with the minimum of work? And this is where I will pass over to Paul, who will talk about the system that he's been developing.
Thanks, Michael. So we set up this task for finding novel word senses. And the way we did this was we said we're going to start from 2 corpora. We're going to have a focus corpus. That's going to be newer texts. And we're going to have a reference corpus, which will be older material. And the assumption that we're going with here is that the reference corpus will cover, or common usages in the reference corpus will be covered in whatever dictionary we're trying to update. And from these 2 corpora, we're going to try to find lemmas that have a novel sense in the focus corpus. And by a novel sense, I simply mean a sense that is common in the focus corpus, but unattested or very rare in the reference corpus. And in addition to finding these lemmas that have these novel or new word senses, we're going to also want to find the instances of those lemmas that are contributing to this novel sense. So how are we going to do that? We decided to take an approach based on word sense induction. So this is a problem that is sort of worked on in computational linguistics. The idea is we're going to take a corpus, and we'll typically have a target lemma or a set of target lemmas, and then we're going to want to group the instances of that lemma in the corpus according to their sense, and to do this automatically, of course. So the approach to word sense induction that we took was based on topic modeling. And this is a currently quite popular technique in computational linguistics. It's been applied to quite a wide range of tasks. The basic idea is that your topic modeling software will, from a collection of documents, a corpus, automatically discover the topics that are in those documents. And I've put topics in quotation marks here because these topics that topic modelers find aren't topics in the sense of the subject of some text. They're just probability distributions over words. So they're a bit more abstract than an actual topic. But then it's actually very easy to apply topic modeling for word sense induction. We just say that the topics that the topic modeler spits out are word senses, and instead of running our topic modeler on documents as is standard, we're going to run it on documents that consist of really just a short context, a couple of sentences around each instance of our target lemma. So when we run the topic modeling software, each instance of our target lemma will be tagged with its automatically induced sense/topic. We've evaluated this topic modeling WSI system in various semi-val WSI tasks, and it performs roughly on par with the state-of-the-art, in some cases the state-of-the-art in those tasks. So it seems like it's reasonable to build off of this system for our real goal, which is to find novel word senses. And actually, once we've got a word sense induction system, finding novel word senses is quite easy. We simply take our focus and reference corpus, we merge them together into a super corpus, we apply our WSI system to this merged corpus, and so now we've assigned each instance of a target lemma with an automatically induced sense. But we know in our super corpus whether a given instance came from the focus corpus or the reference corpus originally. And now we can use simple approaches to keywords to find out which senses, as opposed to words, are most overrepresented in the focus corpus. So we're just applying keyword methods, but now to automatically induced senses instead of words. And this is fine as an approach to finding novel word senses, but there's a little bit more knowledge that we can incorporate. And we know that there are many neologisms nowadays related to computing, the internet, social media. So maybe we can take this into account in our model for finding new word senses. And so we did this by just getting a list of keywords for this domain of computing, the internet, and social media. And I said earlier that a topic in a topic modeler is just a probability distribution. So we can easily get how relevant a topic or induced sense is to this domain of computing and social media once we have a list of keywords for the domain. And we can just use this formula that I'm showing here. So we got this list of keywords by manually examining keywords for the UK WAC versus the BNC. And we manually filtered those to get a list of keywords for computing and social media. And then to incorporate this into a method for finding new word senses, we simply rank all of our senses for all of our lemmas by their novelty score. We also rank them by their relevance to computing and internet and social media. And then we can just take the rank sum of these two rankings to get a final ranking that incorporates both novelty and relevance. It's a very simple approach to combining the information from these two measures. So we've evaluated this method previously, but only on very small data sets. So the goal here was to do a much more wide-scale evaluation and to do it in the context of updating a dictionary. So we compared Newswire texts from 2008 to 1995. We examined roughly 3,000 medium frequency nouns that weren't strong keywords in either our focus or reference corpus. And then we did a lexicographic evaluation for the top 10 lemmas according to 3 methods: the original novelty method, the method that incorporates novelty and relevance, and then randomly selected items. And that's an important point of comparison if we want to know if our methods are working well. And we did the analysis with respect to a reference dictionary, which was Meadow, the online Macmillan dictionary. So here are the findings. These are the 30 lemmas that we analyzed. The items in bold, there's something interesting to say about what we found when we did the analysis. So either a new sense or a dictionary entry that needed to be updated. Michael's going to say a bit more about that in just a sec, but the take-home message from this slide is that we see more bold items for novelty than we do for random. So novelty is giving us something, and novelty plus relevance gives us much more, many more interesting findings than just novelty. So, Michael.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah. I'll just mention a couple of the ones from the novelty column. Cleric and vest. It's quite interesting. If you look at older corpora, BNC, for example, clerics tend to be quite sort of nice, cuddly figures, and the kind of Church of England sort of character that you might find in an Anthony Trollope novel. Overwhelmingly in the modern corpora, cleric and vest reflect the rise of political Islam. Vest tends to be a suicide vest. The clerics, often radical, fundamentalist, with those sort of modifiers. From the novelty and relevance column, there's a lot of stuff here that relates to the rise of the web, basically. Advertiser and copyright are both quite interesting. That, of course, there's a huge amount of advertising on the web now. And we look back at our dictionary entry for words like advertise and copyright, search, and so on, and find that they're not exactly new meanings, but the entry certainly needs tweaking. Copyright is often mentioned in the context of things like games and software, whereas traditionally we think of it in terms of books and music and things like that. So those were cases where we wanted to just tweak and improve dictionary entry a little bit. It might mean adding a few words in the definition, or it might mean adding an example, say a cleric, just to show the breadth of the term. And how do we get to the next one? Oh, and here are some examples from the focus corpus on video. Again, thinking of the video that John Simpson showed this morning. That's different from 10, 15 years ago. Videos were things that were held on videotapes, VHS and things like that. And we discovered that our old Macmillan definition was not quite adequate, or was not quite up to date. So we added, the fact that these things were digitally available and so on. So those are just sort of small changes. And then we come on to actual novel senses. And click is quite interesting because we already had an entry in our dictionary, as most dictionaries would, where a click is an instance of clicking. You can get to this thing through a single click and so on. But we found different examples for click in the focus corpus. For example, there's one about total paid clicks in the fourth quarter rose 30%. Google's fourth quarter clicks increased 25%. And this is where clicks are, it's a little bit more technical, but it's where each click represents some sort of value to the publisher. in terms of advertising. So that's just a sort of slight change. Search, of course, this is in the sort of mass noun sense, the world of search. I mean, it turned out that we had already added that meaning at Macmillan by the time that I got the data from Paul, but Paul's focus corpus, of course, was data from 2008, and that's where this, as it were, new sense of search, the world of search and so on, came up, and certainly by that time we hadn't changed the Macmillan entry. So there's a lot of interesting and useful stuff there. Oh, and in fact, I've got some examples of the clicks here, per click revenue and so on, which shows you the kinds of things that you get. And then we had errors. You might want to say something about this as well, Paul, but this is where the things like airstrikes, candid, junta, plastic, and prostitution were cases where there was let's say a salient news story that was permeated a lot of the focus corpus data, and therefore it suggested a new topic. But when you actually looked at the examples, you found that it was really exactly the same meaning, but just in a new context. You want to add something there?
Just that looking at the results, all of the items that we've identified as these errors are in the novelty column. And it was actually in our earlier evaluations of working with the novelty method and seeing these kinds of errors where examples such as this one with plastic, where we have this news story about baby formula being contaminated with melamine, which is used in plastics.
It was a big scandal in China a few years ago.
So this news story gets picked up by the topic modeler, and it says, "Aha, you are a sense." But of course, it's been fooled here. This is just sort of a group of usages that have many similar words in them, and it's been incorrectly identified as a sense. And so it was examples like this that caused us to look for ways of incorporating this relevance information. And given that we don't see any errors in the novelty plus relevance, at least in the examples that we looked at here, it looks like that's giving us, it's giving us some improvement, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, basically everything in the third column is relevant in our sense, in the general sense, in some way to lexicography. I mean, it's either a new sense or it's something where we need to take action. So we go to the summary slide.
Right. Sure. So we've developed this word sense induction system. It's based on topic modeling. We've applied it to the task of finding new word senses, and we were really quite pleased that we successfully identified many new word senses, but the at least unexpected finding for me was that we also found many cases where a dictionary entry needed updating, which weren't novel senses, but that was still very much useful information to have. So even in cases where we weren't finding new senses, we were still finding very useful information. We have some future work that we're hoping to consider. So some refinements to the method that we're using for finding new word senses. It's basically got, as part of this method, an approach for finding keywords, except now they're key senses instead of keywords. But any approach to finding keywords could be applied in here. So we'd like to look at some alternative methods of keywordness in our approach. And we're also looking for other ways to apply word sense induction in lexicographical tasks. What we have is a system that seems to work, at least in the semi-val evaluations, reasonably well. And so what else could we do with this WSI system to automate some tasks in lexicography? So, thank you.
I don't have much more to say except that very important point that Paul made, where the system was providing us information which showed us where we needed to make changes to existing definitions and sense descriptions, as opposed to the more obvious task of adding brand new senses. And I think that's there's a great deal of pressure on us now that our dictionaries are online, to keep them up to date, because there's nothing worse than an online dictionary which doesn't have stuff in from 4 or 5 years ago. And we're finding increasingly, we do 3 or 4 updates every year at Macmillan. We're finding increasingly that a lot of our work is in changing or adding to definitions of existing senses, like the one I mentioned about meeting. Similarly, marriage is another one that we sort of had to change recently, where it's not that the meaning has really changed. It's not a new sense, but the meaning has sort of either expanded or moved in, or is specializing in a particular area. And so that's a very sort of interesting byproduct of this collaboration that we've had, which has been absolutely great for me, and I think it has enormous potential. So thank you. I think that's all we want to say.
Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect timing. We still have time for questions. Yes.
Daniel.
Should I just call it out, or?
There's a microphone right there.
Oh, I think Gregory was first, so...
I have 2 questions. The first question is, the relevance thing is when you said things were related to social networks and online.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we chose that domain because it seemed appropriate for finding contemporary new word senses, which are often related to.
Well, that's what you said, domain. Okay, and also you said you had 3,000 words you were examining, and you showed the results of the top 10.
Yeah.
The results, I suppose, have a number associated with them, which is the relevance.
Right.
Did you find any sort of break point of things below a certain factor or noise or something?
Right. So in this study, we've only looked at the top 10 for each of those methods. I mean, it was quite a bit of work to analyze the items. So we don't know how the quality degrades as we go down the list. I mean, it's something that we'll need to look at down the road. Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Daniel from Phase6, and I have 2 questions. First question, do you only look at with the topical modeling, does that include also the syntactic and collocative patterns, or is it only looking at the semantics of the environment of the sentence?
So the information that the topic modeler sees is the lemmas that are in the context surrounding the target word, but we also maintain some positional word information for the immediate context around the target. And so that captures, it's a very coarse-grained way of getting at the syntactic behavior of the target lemma. But we don't explicitly have, say, dependency parse features in our representation of context. We've experimented with that in the, not in this work, but in the semi-val, sort of more direct evaluations of the WSI system. And we actually found very little benefit to adding that information in, so the more expensive dependency parse information. And so given the cost of getting it, we've just gone with the more simple model.
And my second question, do you have a model to know when the semantics of the context, the environment, the dilemmas that you look at in the paragraph, you said it's a few sentences, the document is a few sentences surrounding, when that is relevant and when it is not relevant, or how big the context has to be? Do you sometimes look at the whole paragraph or the whole document, or is it always a fixed size?
So it's a fixed size document for this model, which is 3 sentences. So the sentence that the target is occurring in, and the previous and the next sentence, unless it's at a document boundary, in which case we don't get the previous or next sentence. Yeah.
Lars, I think you're next.
Lars Trapp Jensen from Denmark. In your presentation, you were focusing on detecting novelties, new senses. But I wonder if you could use the same method to detect outdating if you compare the reference and the focus corpus. A lot of updating has to do with saying this is now not longer an official term in, say, education or in public administration and so forth. have you tried and if it works in that direction?
So we've thought about sort of flipping it around and sort of finding things that are not in the focus corpus that are in the reference corpus, but we haven't done anything in that space yet. I guess we're also interested in working from a sense inventory, so a dictionary entry, and finding senses that aren't attested in the corpus and going about it that way. So it's on our to-do list, and yeah, thanks for that point.
Sivan Krek from Slovenia. Actually, my first question was similar to one of the previous ones. Do you think that topic modeling is the method to do this task? Or is there a possibility there is another machine learning method which could do the task also, or maybe even better?
Topic modeling is seeming to work pretty well for the time being, but of course we'll move on to something different when something different comes along. And we can measure how well something works through these semi-eval WSI evaluations. And as good as those evaluations, despite the limitations of those evaluations, if we see improvement there, then that suggests that we might want to use other methods in work like this.
I have just a small one. Did you in any way consider text types, so that you would expect, for instance, if you just take Twitter dumps or something like that, to text types where novelty would be more pronounced, so that you could include it in the calculation?
I think that's one of the areas where, from a lexicographic application, you'd want to refine the method in terms of the types of corpus you had. Ideally you'd want to have a corpus with the same sort of design and renewed each year, and keep an eye on things each year or something like that, and pay more attention, to specific text types, so that some of the noise that we were getting there, especially in that middle column, might be, you might be able to suppress that by looking at more, maybe less at pure frequency and more at dispersion among different types of text. But in fact, Paul's sort of relevance feature did seem to cope with a lot of those problems, because remember that right-hand column was pretty impressive, I thought.
Could I make? Yes. Just one comment I wanted to make. If we're done with questions, are we done?
There are two more.
Oh, okay. I'll save it for the end.
Adam?
Really interesting work, but I'm now going to be very critical, quite likely. Can you go back to the top 10 slide? Yeah. Firstly, first simple question, what does random mean?
Random? So we had these 3,000 lemmas.
Yeah.
And we automatically selected, randomly selected from that list, making sure that it wasn't one of the top 10 from novelty or novelty plus relevance. And then we showed those to Michael. But we didn't tell him the source of these, right? That he was.
I thought so, but that makes it, that rather undermines the exercise, because you've got, it shows that Michael has a strong tendency to find words interesting, because 3 of the random words are in.
But if you compare two corpora that are from, 13 years apart, surely you're going to find some differences if you look at random lemmas.
Yes.
And we looked at the random because that gives us a benchmark, right? A baseline for how much you see, right? And that's 3. And we see more interesting findings using the automated methods. And okay, sure, you'd want to have a bigger sample before you start, making grandiose claims about this, but this was the biggest that we could look at for this project.
It's kind of, it's a big question mark. If 30% of all the work, that implies that 30% of all the words need as much attention as the highlighted ones, which is somewhat alarming to any dictionary publisher.
I don't think those in the first column needed much at all. I think with audit, it turned out it was revealing a sense which was highly technical and would have appeared. I think we found it in some sort of online business and commerce dictionary, but it wasn't the sort of thing that you would put in the general dictionary. I can't quite remember what the issue was with the other two. But certainly all the weight of interest was in the other two columns, and particularly the last column.
And the last question, yes.
Thank you. My name is Thierry Leclerc, Vienna. My question is on comparison. How do you compare the sense you induced with the dictionary you have? Which is the format? The format you have in your dictionary, which is the format you get from the induction? How does it work? Do you do the comparison manually? Or do you have an automatic mean to see this sense is already there?
I mean, this is very much work in progress, and it's a sort of first shot of trying to apply Paul's work to this project of finding novel senses. So this was all done manually, and yeah, of course, we would want to develop that into a slicker application at some point. But I mean, I think it's a very first stage, and so far I'm quite impressed with the results.
You wanted to conclude?
Yeah. Just the comment that I wanted to make was that the software that's underlying this method is freely available online and under a license that even permits its use in commercial situations, if you're interested.
Okay, thank you very much.